Okay. So again, there's kind of an interesting dynamic set up here, where the antagonists are the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders, right? And they all have a vision of the Messiah, who's basically going to um, validate their own agenda, that they, as the leaders of the Jewish people, be the leaders of a free and more powerful Jewish people, right? They have their own desires, which are blinding them from seeing the actual Messiah that Jesus is, the kind of Son of Man Messiah, right? The Messiah who will suffer for the sake of his people and die to free them from the oppressive forces of sin. And not just Roman oppression, but all forms of oppression. So there's kind of a deeper messianic understanding here, The chief priests, the scribes, the Jewish religious authorities, they don't see it. They're looking for their expected kind of Messiah. And when Jesus comes as a more profound and effective kind of Messiah, right? One who brings peace to Jerusalem and the whole world, not strife and rebellion against Rome. He's not against Rome. And that's what's really interesting. They can't understand, right? And it's not the first time we've seen this dilemma in the Old Testament. The whole book of Jonah, for example, points out this tendency in the Jewish tradition to think if God is for us, then he's against the other people, right? If he loves us, then he must hate our enemies. Well, this isn't the first time this has been challenged, right? This isn't the first time that the Jewish tradition, the Israelite tradition has said, well, wait a minute. We're making this assumption, but that doesn't quite seem to fit with what's been revealed to us about God. He's the God of all, right? So you end up having this dramatic power struggle, as Byrne calls it, between the visitor from God, right? Jesus, the one who is here and allowing us to, the one who's revealing the hospitality of God to us, but also allowing us to participate in it. Which, remember, that is the kingdom of heaven. That is the true freedom, right? So there's a struggle between the one from God, Jesus the Messiah, and the Jewish and religious political authorities of the time. And that's the real crux. Rome, the people who actually tortured and executed Jesus to death, the Roman government, they are out of the picture. Luke is like removing them. They're saying, no, this has nothing to do with Rome, right? This is all about the corrupt Jewish leaders not being able to see the true Messiah because they blinded themselves by their own desires, right? Matter of fact, in Luke, the Romans, in the form of Pontius Pilate, continually proclaims Jesus' innocence. Just keeps trying to say, no, he didn't do anything wrong. Stop it. Stop trying to kill this guy. And only carries out the execution because they're backed into a corner, right? So what Byrne sees here is that Luke is trying to tell the Christians of his time, don't blame the Romans. We can live in the Roman Empire. We do not have to rebel against them. So the blame goes on the corrupt Jewish religious authorities who weren't really living out who they were supposed to be. They weren't really following the prophets. They weren't really following God. Jesus, the Messiah, is really following God. And that's why he's clashing with them. Rome, that's just the tool. It's not their fault that they killed Jesus. They were just kind of like a tool in the hands of the Jewish religious authorities. Makes sense, right? When Luke is writing for Gentiles living in the Roman Empire. And he wants to let them know we can live here. We don't have to blame these people. Now, it also makes sense if you realize at this time that these both Jewish and Gentile believers were being kicked out of the Jewish synagogues during the time Luke was writing. And the rabbis in the Jewish world, they said at some point, no, Jesus is not the Messiah. Anybody who says that should be kicked out of the synagogues. And there were people like St. Paul, he was called Saul at that time, that would actually go around and bring Jews who said Jesus was Messiah back to Jerusalem in chains so they could be whipped and chastised. So not only was their motivation to have peace with Rome for Christians, to make peace with Rome during the time that Luke was writing, but there was also a strong antagonism between the Jewish religious authorities and those Jews who believed Jesus was the Messiah. And they said, you can't believe Jesus is the Messiah, and they kicked them out of the synagogues. So Byrne continues here. It's really the most profound contest. It's the spiritual forces of good versus evil that are really being played out. Right? The Jewish religious authorities are evil. They're representing Satan, right? They're following evil. And we're even told when Judas decides to betray Jesus and turns him in to the Roman authorities to be tortured and killed, Luke explained it's because Satan has entered into him. He was following the devil, evil. It's very black and white, and it's presented in the most fundamental sense. Now, the Gospel according to Luke can be contrasted to, especially the Gospel according to Mark, because Jesus is very cool and under control. Now, he suffers. He does go through anguish, emotional anguish, trying to decide to when he faces the temptation of should he go through with his mission when it includes him being tortured to death. It's not like he doesn't care or he doesn't have an emotional reaction or he doesn't experience anxiety and pain. But it's not like in the Gospel according to Mark, where he really is, his humanity is really stressed, where he really feels like very similar to the way anybody else would feel in that situation. So as Byrne puts it, what Luke brings out are certain aspects of the meaning of Jesus' death, that he died in the freedom of love, a human love enacting the divine love that drove his entire mission, that his death brought about forgiveness, that attending to it were all the qualities, healing, assurance, peace, that have been features of his ministry as a whole. So Luke explains the whole passion narrative, the whole suffering and death of Jesus, in a way that really brings to light what Jesus' mission was all about. And just the way he healed people out of compassion, right? Included people out of compassion. During his death, he is not going to lose sight of that, right? And we'll see him love till the end. And in the midst of his suffering, he always remains free to love others. He's always, in that way, in control. that no matter what you do to him, right, he can love you. And this is very important theologically in Luke and for the whole Christian tradition. It's very important, you see, in our very understanding of what the essence of God is. We'll see later writers like St. John the Evangelist, right, writing, God is love. And you can see that in Luke, right? Jesus as the incarnation of God, as the presence of God on earth, he just loves no matter what. Even the people who are torturing him to death, he loves them.